Illyricum is the region that we call the Balkans today. So Serbia, Croatia, up in that area. And he preached the gospel there because nobody else had done it yet. Part of the gospel is taking the good news, the gospel, out to the nations. And he believes that he has fulfilled his calling to bring the gospel to these regions. He has preached the gospel to as many people as he can practically reach without moving there and spending his entire ministry there. So he's taught the gospel enough that he has established multiple congregations in the area who can then take over and spread the gospel from there. And this is what Paul sees his ministry as. He's not there to become the pastor or the bishop or anything like that. His ministry, his mission is to go places that have not heard the gospel of Yeshua yet and start it. And then, teach people and train people up who can carry on the ministry from there. But his job is to get it started and then move on to the next place. And he's slowly working his way west across the empire. He starts in his home region in southeast Turkey. Then he traveled through Galatia and, the other Roman provinces on that peninsula, and then over to the Greek peninsula, and made several trips through there in different areas, and then went up to Illyricum, like he's explaining here. Verses 20 and 21. Excuse me. And thus I make it my ambition to preach the gospel, not where Christ has already been named, lest I build on someone else's foundation, but as it is written, those who have never been told of him will see, and those who have never heard will understand. This is another one of those places where it sounds like Paul is bragging. But it's not bragging in the way that we think of it. It's not like he's in a competition to get there before anybody else to make a name for himself. This quote in verse 21 is from Isaiah 52:15. Thus he will sprinkle many nations. Kings will shut their mouths on account of him, for what had not been told them they will see, and what they had not heard they will understand. And this is a messianic prophecy. It probably applies in two different layers. It applies to Israel being exiled and scattered among the nations, where they are both persecuted by the nations, and in some ways they are blessing the nations. But then they will repent and be restored. But in a much more important level, this is talking about Yeshua. That Yeshua will be high and lifted up and greatly exalted, as it says in verse 13. And his appearance was marred more than any man, which was literally true of Yeshua, and his form more than the sons of men. He was beaten beyond recognition, crucified, killed in a terrible way. Thus he will sprinkle many nations. And this is, on the one hand, it's talking about the Israelites scattered among the nations, but it's also an allusion to the idea of sacrifice and sanctification. By the sprinkling of his blood, the sins of the nations are removed, at least those among the nations who repent and call on his name. And kings will shut their mouths on account of him. For what had not been told, they will see, and what they had not heard, they will understand. And Paul sees this as the story of Yeshua's incarnation, his death, and his resurrection has to be taken to the nations, and specifically to kings, to the rulers of the nations. And Paul frequently makes a point of going to government officials, to local governors or mayors or people of importance. And he wants to go see the emperor. And next time he goes to Jerusalem, he's going to make that happen. So this is what he believes that he has been commissioned to do, to fulfill this prophecy. So when he says, it is my ambition to preach the gospel where Christ has not already been named, because he doesn't want to build on someone else's foundation, that's not him saying, I want to get there first. That's him saying, I want to be used by God to fulfill this prophecy. The use of that word ambition here kind of gives it the wrong impression. His earnest desire is to preach the gospel. It doesn't mean that he's ambitious in the sense of wanting to get ahead of other people, but his ambition in the sense that this is his great earnest desire to accomplish this.